Hello everyone, welcome to another video of Into the Hive Mind. This one is basically just me going over my LVO list. So had a decent number of practice or a decent amount of practice with this list. Essentially since the Crusher Stampede has come out, I played 4 practice games, one against each of my teammates that are all running pretty meta lists. And so I played 4 practice games, and then I played an RTT, and then I played a GT. My practice games, my first one was against Drukhari, the Thick City list that I definitely lost against. That was my first game with the Crusher Stampede. Was definitely still running the ropes, or learning the ropes, and running stuff that is not ideal. I was trying out Molochs. I was trying to be really silly with all of the OBSEC options, and it meant that I wasn't very killy, so the Drukhari player just obliterated me. My second game was against Ben Neal with his Grey Knights, and very much lost that game as well. Then I played against Colin K and his Kill Tank Orc list that he had literally just won a GT with the previous weekend, and I lost to him as well. So was doing great and decided to try one more time where I played against my girlfriend, and she was running 4 Keeper of Secrets, Shilaxi, 3 Keepers, and Bellicor with that Monster Mash list. And I lost that one too. So going into my RTT, I had played 4 practice games and lost every single one of them, but had definitely learned a lot from every single game. And as I've said on previous videos, guys, I don't win practice games. I don't know why. It's just become a really funny joke at this point that I don't win practice games. But anyways, so I then finalized my list to prepare it for the just 8-person RTT with some of us prepping for LVO. And the list that I ended up bringing is just a single battalion, Leviathan, obviously, Crusher Stampede, obviously. So it's led by Swarmlord, who has Catalyst and Onslaught. Then my Warlord is a Flyrant with the D3 extra attacks Warlord trait, and then Murderous size and the Ignore Invuln Boneswords. This guy's amazing, and just Ignore Invulns with D3 extra attacks and Strength 7 for flat 4 damage is really good. I gave him Paroxysm in the Horror because he's going to be flying up into my opponent's front lines basically right from the get-go. So giving him powers to debuff my opponent's army is pretty good on him. Then I have another Flyrant. This one has the Biomorphic Carapace, and because he's more durable, he gets the more important psychic powers from the new Crusher Stampede discipline with the D3 extra attacks and then the reroll hit rolls psychic power. Because of this, he's basically kind of hanging back. He does not have Murderous size. I couldn't give it to him. So he just has double Scything Talons. Basically, he just flies around, is really durable, gets where I need him to go, and gives the buffs where I need it to go. And then, he's not bad in combat. He still has 5 attacks, strength 6, AP 3 for 3. So he can definitely kill stuff, just not as much as the other Flyrant. In troops, 3 units of 3 warriors, all with the bioweapon bond. Giving out those +1s to hit just all game long is really powerful. Most of our monsters can double stack with that between shooting and combat, so makes it exceptionally good. And then I ran a Haruspex with Murderous size, and this guy is definitely someone that people are sleeping on. I mentioned all the combos that you can get with him. But essentially, you give him the D3 extra attacks, you give him the +1 to hit from the warriors, you give him the reroll all hit rolls, and he can get up to 7 D3 attacks, rerolling all hits, pop 1 CP for exploding 6s, and hitting on 3s. Makes him just an absolute blender, because then every guy he kills, he gets another attack. And he's great. And 170 points for toughness 8, 13 wounds, 5 up invul, -1 damage is just a really tanky profile. Then I kind of finish up the list with 2 Barbed Hero Duels. Same reason that the Haruspex is good, makes these guys good, plus they have really good guns. The +1 to hit goes on them. So basically the Haruspex and the Barbed Hero Duels get all the +1s. And as I was saying, they get a kind of double benefit from it because then they're hitting on 2s and shooting and in combat. And I do play very aggressively with these Barbed Hero Duels because, I mean, they're 300 points. You want to get all their points out of them. And they're so tanky that it doesn't matter if you move them forwards. Worst case scenario, you get tied up, but you should be able to fight your way and shoot your way out of that pretty quickly. And then the last 2 monsters in the list are 2 Harpies with Venom Cannons. These guys are basically in the list to be able to do the Mortal Wound off the charge strat that basically wherever I want on the board, being able to move 30 inches is just fantastic with these guys. They're also just really great movement blockers. Basically, if you get first turn, you throw them up 30 inches right in your opponent's face and say, deal with this. And they don't want to because you have so many other monsters that are much higher priority, but these Harpies are literally in front like an inch away from their entire army. The Venom Cannons can sometimes do some cool chip damage, but otherwise don't do much. They're really just there to do the mortals on the charge. And oftentimes my opponent then charges in with their entire army to kill it because they don't want to shoot at it. So they shoot the important thing and then charge their whole army to finish off the Harpy, which then just auto explodes and kills tons of dudes. And it's great. They also just get me engage turn 1. I basically take engage and rod every single game. And because of that, I round out the list with 2 Lictors and a Pyrolord. So just a rundown on units real quick again. Swarmlord, 2 Flyrants, 2 Barbed Hero Duels, Haruspex, and 2 Harpies for 8 monsters. And then 3 units of 3 Warriors, 2 Lictors, and a Pyrolord. That's the list. So in this RTT, my round 1, I went up against Imperial Knights. This guy basically had a Castellan, a Crusader, and then 6 Armiger equivalents, like 2 Moirax, 2 Armiger, 2 Warglaves. This guy was somewhat of a newer player, and I managed to get first turn, and I double moved my Warlord Flyrant, gave him the reroll wound stratagem, gave him the D3 extra attack psychic power, and then fought twice, and I killed my opponent's Castellan turn 1. And that was really the only model I was scared of, because his Crusader just had the Gatling gun that's only 2 damage, reduced to 1 against me. So, yeah, wasn't overly concerned after killing the Castellan, and the Harpies managed to just tie up his Armigers, so they were forced to shoot in combat or fall back. And that game was over very quickly. I ran away with it. I think I got 95 points to my opponent's 40-something. So won round 1. And then round 2 was a super close game against Sisters. So this game ended up where I barely won, 84-82. And I think the only reason I won is because I went first and was able to establish board control. If I'd gone second, I think I would have been on the back foot from the get-go, and my opponent would have won. Basically, right off the bat, he had 2 Retributor units with multi-meltas. He put 1 into the Haruspex, rolled boxcars for damage, and they were in Melta, or they got the Melta bonus. And even though I'm -1 damage, he's +2 damage, and he rolled boxcars. So he just one-shot the Haruspex with 1 multi-melta. And then the other multi-melta did the exact same thing and one-shot my Warlord Flyrant. So that was a really, really bad start to the game. I mean, he did have reroll hits and wounds. So his 2 multi-meltas got 2 hits, 2 wounds each into each creature. I failed my invulns on all of them. And then he just literally rolled 6-6-6-5 for his damage and picked up both monsters right from the get-go. So after being on that back foot, I did manage to barely win, but I finished that game literally only having 2 Lictors alive at the end and only won by 2 points. But it was a win. And because of that, I got to finish out this RTT going into the finals against my teammate, playing the Thick City Drukhari that I had played like 2 weeks previously in a practice game, and he had just obliterated me. This time, I'm a lot more comfortable with my list. I'm starting to really figure out how to play the Crusher Stampede, and we had a much closer game. This time, I managed to kill all 4 of his Grotesques, all 6 of his Talos, and all 3 of his Chronos. But he learned from our practice game where the Harpy charged and killed Drazar basically right off the bat after popping his transport. He did everything he could to protect Drazar, and because of that, he managed to... Basically, he didn't even get Drazar out of the transport until turn 3, and by then I didn't have anything left that could really threaten him. And Drazar just single-handedly killed an entire half of the table, which, yeah, that's why I love doing the mortal wounds on the charge to him, but I just couldn't at that point in the game, and my opponent played very well with that. Also, he had 2 Ravagers with triple Dark Lance that I should have killed turn 1 or 2, and I just focused on the Talos and Chronos instead, and I killed them all, but that meant that all of a sudden, by the time we're in turn 3, I have nothing left that can shoot at range. He focused down the Barbed Hierodules, and I think all my monsters were dead by turn 3. I just didn't make any saves on turn 2, which was really unfortunate. So he still had both Ravagers alive for the entire game, and that allowed him to get the win. It was a very close game, though. I did manage to keep it 73-67. So I was only 6 points behind, but he did win the game, giving me fourth, because I didn't get very many points, I guess. But I went 2-1, lost in the finals of that RTT, and it was just a fun local RTT with a group of friends, so no big loss for not winning. It wasn't even ITCs counted, but then I took the exact same list. I thought about making some tweaks and decided not to, that I liked the list a lot, even though it didn't win, it was very close to winning. So I took the exact same list to the GT in Salt Lake City, which is about an 8-hour drive for me, and went with my girlfriend and Ben Neal bringing his Grey Knights, and the 3 of us all participated in this. I think it was a 46-person GT, which then dropped down to 38 after it actually started. So 46 people registered, 38 actually playing. And it was a 5-round event. And day 1, round 1, I got paired up against a Black Templar player, Jeremy. He told me he was slightly rusty in tournament play. He'd been to several tournaments before, but not since COVID, understandably so. But he was playing his Black Templar army, which was not it wasn't a meta army. It was a very good army. He had 3 Redemptor Dreads and a Contemptor with Volkite. So it certainly was not a soft army, but it wasn't running a lot of the current meta Black Templar stuff. And I got to go first, and I basically was able to kill 1 Redemptor off the charge with my Flyrant, and shooting put the other Redemptor down to only 2 wounds left. And then on his turn, he killed both my Harpies and my Warlord Flyrant, which made me a little concerned that he killed 3 monsters turn 1. But then on my turn, I killed basically all of his infantry and the second Redemptor Dread, and I was able to then tie up his Contemptor and Redemptor. His last 2 remaining Dreads, I was able to tie them up with the -1 to wound Flyrant. And because of that, he had to shoot that Flyrant with the -1 to hit, and did very little damage. He actually didn't kill any monsters turn 2. And because of that, the game quickly snowballed, and I managed to get a 95-48 win. So very fun game, very fun guy. But yes, it did quickly snowball out of control as soon as he didn't kill anything turn 2. Then round 2, I went up against Roberto with Drukhari. He traveled up from Las Vegas and basically came up with a couple teammates. He was running kind of the old Drukhari list, though. He was not running the Thick City. He was running basically Archon, Drazar, Trueborn, 2 units of Incubi, 2 Ravagers with Dark Lances and 5 Raiders, all with Dark Lances. He had a Succubus with the Precision Blows and Triptych Whip. He had 10 Blood Brides, 10 Homoxites, and 2 units of 5 Racks. So basically, MSU Drukhari all in transports, which is definitely very popular a few months ago. Now the Thick City's kind of taken over with that, but this game, I got first turn again and expected to have this huge alpha strike, and I just didn't. Basically, I got first turn, and he was able to hide all of his raiders and everything except for one. Basically, I was able to get an angle on Drazar's raider with 1 Barbed Hero Duel. I opened it up, and but then I couldn't charge anything, I couldn't charge Drazar with my Harpy. He did see that coming and positioned himself, so I couldn't charge Drazar, and I didn't want to just charge my Harpy into racks and then get heroically intervened by Drazar, so I didn't charge, and instead my other Harpy and Warlord Flyrant charged into a Raider and Ravager, and the Harpy didn't kill the Raider, which I didn't expect it to, but it tied it up, and then my Warlord Flyrant also didn't kill the Raider, which I definitely did expect him to. Somehow with like 6 attacks, he didn't... 6 attacks ignoring invulns, he just completely whiffed and only got 2 wounds through onto the Raider, leaving it with 2 wounds left. So then on my opponent's turn, he charged Drazar, the Incubi, his Succubus, the Witches, his Archon, and his Homunculus all into my Warlord Flyrant, and somehow I just tanked. I mean, I did have Catalyst, but he brought me down to 3 wounds left with all of that. The Archon was making me have to fight last, so I had to just tank all of it before I even got a chance to fight, and I did. So then I immediately put all my attacks into Drazar, but then kind of whiffed. So I couldn't be upset because I just made all the saves. But my Warlord Flyrant has now whiffed both times he's attacked this game. He only did 2 damage to Drazar. And yeah, that's not enough. But then on my turn, my other Flyrant came forward to save the day. I cast Paroxysm on his Incubi, charged Drazar, killed him with Immortal Wounds on the charge, and then killed his Witches and whittled down most of the Witches. And then the Warlord got to fight the Incubi, who had to fight last from Paroxysm. And because of that, he threw everything into that one Flyrant and then didn't kill it. And then I killed everything that was in combat with it, and he just had almost nothing left. So he basically just had a whole bunch of transports and some racks that, while gave him a lot of points, couldn't kill me. So I was able to just slowly eat away at the rest of his army, and he just couldn't do anything about it. So I ended up winning that game 97-55. So I've now had a 95-point win against Black Templar, 97-point win against Drukhari, and going into the final game of day 3, I am now playing against Jordan with his Sisters army again. So I barely won against Sisters in the RTT, and with this one, we're now playing Sisters on Overrun. Now, Overrun is a mission that I hate because I feel like whoever goes first wins, because it's a hold 2, hold 3 with 3 objectives in your deployment zone. That means whoever goes first gets to put the pressure on the opponent, and the opponent basically, the battle is fought in the second player's deployment zone, and you're just basically trading that third objective for the vast majority of the game, meaning whoever goes first is going to score their 10 primary every single turn, and whoever goes second is probably only scoring 5 primary every single turn, just kind of handing the game to whoever goes first. Well, with this, I did go first, so I was feeling very strong about that, but my opponent was running, his list was basically Celestine, Morvenval, like 5 other characters, and then he was running 30 Halberd Sacrosancts. And he's running them with halberds to get around the -1 damage that he was expecting to be in the meta, and he was right. So anyways, these halberds are all strength 6, AP 3, 1 damage. But then he also is running an Exorcist and 2 units of Retributors, all with Multi-Melta. I won the first turn, and I immediately target his Retributors, because I know that if that unit's left alone, they can literally win the game by themselves with their 4 Multi-Meltas if I give them the chance. And he had 1 unit in a Rhino, and the second unit he put on an interesting piece of terrain that was both a ruin and dense. It was like I could see it. It didn't block line of sight at all, but it basically was giving him light cover and dense, and he was running the Sisters order that basically gives them reduces the AP by 1. And so with that, I really suddenly felt my AP2 army-wide in this game. And between all my shooting, I fired both barbed hero duels, including giving one of them exploding 6s, and both harpies all into the Retributors. And I only killed 4 of the 5 of them. Because he was -1 to hit, and he had a 2-up armor save and reduced my AP by 1. So he had a 3-up save on every single shot, and he just rolled really good and only lost 4 guys. He did end up using his miracle die. He did end up re-rolling 1, but yeah, he lived with 1 dude left, spent the CP to auto-pass morale, and then promptly had his Hospitaler, whatever you call it, bring the Retributors back. And that was really rough. That means that my turn 1, I literally did nothing. The only thing that I did was my Harpy charged and did mortal wounds to the to a character that had 5-up feel no pain, and I put him down to 1 wound. And then the Harpy promptly died when all of his Sacrosancts heroically intervened, which I didn't know they could do. But they can. And yeah, I promptly had my Harpy die, which only gave me 2 points on engage instead of the 3 that I would have had if I just not charged. But you learn. And then on his turn, he used both Retributor squads to shoot into my barbed hero duel, and didn't kill it with the first volley, but then he used both cherubs, which LVO does not let you do, but I guess he got permission from the judge for this event, so he could use both cherubs in 1 shooting phase. So he got to shoot basically 12 multi-melta shots, and he did pick up the barbed hero duel turn 1, so that definitely hurt a lot. Yeah, so at LVO, I don't have to worry about that quite as much, but obviously those units are still super good. Then my turn 2, I basically charged into and killed off both Retributor squads. Since shooting wasn't doing the trick, I sent both Flyrants just to get the Retributors, and it worked, killed them all. And then basically the rest of the game devolved into 3 major combats with all 3 of his Sacrosanct units. So I had my other barbed hero duel and my -1 to wound Flyrant against a 10 Sacrosancts, Celestine, and Morbin Vol on the left side of the board. On the right side of the board, it was the Haruspecs versus 10 Sacrosancts and Ephrael Stern. And then in the middle of the board, it was Swarmlord and my Ignore Invuln Flyrant versus 10 Sacrosancts and his Canoness. My opponent was just rolling like a god and eventually ended up winning all 3 of these combats. I just could not kill the Sacrosancts, which is crazy, but I just could not kill him at all. And because he's strength 6, he's wounding me on 5s, but with full rerolls from Morbin Vol for at least one of those units, he was dealing a significant amount of damage to me. So yeah, he eventually won all 3 of those fights. And however, it took him all the way until turn 5 to do so. And he'd left all 3 of my warrior units alone the entire game, focusing on just killing my monsters. And this let me have my 10 primary points turn 2 through 5. So I got 40 on the primary. And I was able to deny him one of his objectives turn 2, but then he was able to get 10 points turn 3 and 4, and he maxed primary turn 5 after he basically tabled me. So we both got 40 points on primary. So then it just comes down to secondaries. And on secondaries, I scored 9 points on engage, again, that 1 point turn 1 that I missed out on really could have helped. But I scored 9 on Engage, 12 points on Rod, and 15 points on Assassination after Swarmlord went out in a blaze of glory. Morvenn Vahl came over, killed Swarmlord, who was my last monster, and I had 1 CP to either reroll my save or auto-explode. And I chose to auto-explode because he had 3 characters next to me, all with like 2 or 3 wounds left. And I was hoping to just get lucky on one of them. I didn't kill either of the 2 little characters, but somehow managed to roll a 6, and my opponent failed all 3 4-up Feel No Pains, and I took the last 3 wounds off of Morvenn Vahl. And because of Celestine with her Gemini, that gave me max on Assassinate. So 9 Engage, 12 Rod, max Assassinate. My opponent, he got 9 for Leap of Faith, 12 on Raise the Banner, and maxed Bring It Down. So that means both of us had 40 primaries and then 9, 12, 15 on secondaries for an 86-86 tie. Was an absolutely amazing game, and if my opponent, he definitely made his biggest mistake was he had an Exorcist all game long, and he kept shooting it into my warrior or into my monsters, and if he just fired it into one of my warrior squads like turn 1 or 2, I would have had to turn a monster around to go sit on an objective, and he would have won the game easily. But because I had all 3 warrior squads sitting on objectives the entire game long, I managed to basically pull out the tie, even though I did eventually get tabled and my opponent rolled like a god. So yeah, finished day 1 being 2 wins and a draw, which I'll take. That was definitely really good. And then that brings us into day 2. I do get pared down to basically we ended up with 4 undefeated. Like at the end of day 1, we had 4 people that were 3-0. Me and my opponent were 2-0-1, and then the rest of the field. But because me and my opponent had already played each other, we both got pared down to the top people that were 2-1. So I ended up going up against Custodes. We played Vital Intelligence, and this is against Derek. And Derek is basically running Trajan, a Captain on Jet Bike, and a Blade Champion as his 3 characters. And then he has 3 units of Sagittarium, 3, 3, and 4. And then a unit of 5 Alaris Terminators that he put in Deep Strike. He also had 2 Contemptor Dreads and 5 Venatari. Now, Derek won first turn that he didn't want because he deployed very defensively, and he wanted me to come to him, but because he won, he left his defensible position to go and grab objectives. He did his data intercept with his Blade Champion and basically shoots me with everything. But because everything in his army is 2 damage and I'm -1 damage, the smoke clears from his shooting, and he has done a total of 7 wounds to my Warlord Flyrant and 4 wounds to Swarmlord. And that's it. So then on my turn, now basically I have every charge I could possibly want, and on my turn I basically shoot one of his dreads down to 2 wounds left with all my guns. Swarmlord charges into a Sagittarium squad. Both my Flyrants charge into his Venatari and kill all of them. I put Paroxysm on his Dreadnought that I hadn't wounded, and my 1 Harpy had flown over to the other side of the board, did 1 wound to his Blade Champion with my Stinger Salvo, and then charged him and did 6 mortals on the charge, killing his dude that was doing data intercept. And then Swarmlord fights, kills all 3 Sagittarium. My opponent interrupts with his Dreadnought that has 2 wounds left, 1-shots my Harpy, that I then auto-explode and kill the Contemptor Dread in the explosion. So yeah, after turn 1, my opponent is left with 2 characters, 2 units of Sagittarium, and a Dreadnought that has to fight last. And then his 5 Alaris Terminators in Deep Strike that don't have any way to buff their 9-inch charge out of Deep Strike. So he basically is just really frustrated with the -1 damage when his entire army has only 2 damage weaponry, and he basically just concedes turn 1. So we have a 3-hour lunch and instead just look over the pre-release of his new Custodes book together. And so I get to do that and watch my teammate Ben play Rich Kilton on the stream table. And I won that game 97-21. So now I am 3-0-1. And the other guy, my round 3 opponent, Jeremy, had lost his round 4. So now in the top, it is my teammate Ben with his Grey Knights and a guy who came up from Vegas with his Grey Knights. And they're playing on the top table on stream. And I get to play Rich, that Ben just barely beat in a super close game on the stream round 4 that basically had both of them in a slugfest in the middle of the table from turn 1, resulting in them both only getting 3 turns, even with a chess clock. So they both clocked out at turn 3, and Ben won by like 3 points. It was like 37-34. Really low scoring because they only got 3 points in, and both of them were just constantly denying each other all the primaries. And so yeah, Ben beat Rich barely, and that means that I get to play Rich, fighting for second place. For those who don't know him, Rich Kilton is basically the #1 orc guy out there. He's taken top orcs at LVO for the last 3 or 4 years at least. He's been playing orcs probably almost longer than I've been alive. He's a fantastic player, fantastic guy to play against, and this is going to be my 5th time against him. And so far, my record against him is 0-4. He's won every time we've played against each other. And I'm really looking forward to playing against him again, though, because he is just a fantastic player. And I don't feel like I can claim a win in Utah if I don't beat Rich. So anyways, we're playing the mission Sweep and Clear. And Rich's list is always unique and basically has always been one playstyle. And it's grab every single primary on the board and deny your opponent any points. This has been his strategy for multiple editions, and that means that his list is an Evil Sun's Battalion that has 3 knobs on Smash a Squigs, a Beast Boss on Squigosaur, a Pain Boss, 2 units of 10 Beast Snagga Boys, 10 Truck Boys, 5 Commandos, 3 Deathcoptas, 2 units of 3 Squighog Boys. And as if that wasn't enough, he then also has an Outrider detachment of Death Skulls, which means all the infantry in this detachment is OBSEC. And that is a War Boss, 10 Truck Boys, 5 Commandos, 5 Mega Knobs, 3 units of 5 Storm Boys, 2 Trucks, and a Ruckachuk Squig Buggy. So just tons and tons and tons of speedy, small OBSEC units, and then 4 characters that hit you like a ton of bricks. We pick secondaries, and Rich basically goes all in on the objective play, which again is absolutely his strategy. He's very good at it. And he chooses Stranglehold, Retrieve Octarius, and Direct Assault. And normally in this mission, I will always take those exact same 3, Retrieve Octarius, Stranglehold, and Direct Assault. But I know Rich is one of the few guys that will just obliterate me on those objectives. So I instead decide to go the kill route. I pick Assassinate, Grind them down, and Direct Assault. I deploy very aggressively, and Rich deploys very defensively. But then Rich wins the roll for first turn, and he basically stays defensive, only grabbing his 3 objectives he needs for Stranglehold, and putting all of his shooting into my only OBSEC. He immediately just goes straight for my OBSEC, trying to take it away from me. Puts all his shooting into a warrior unit and barely fails to kill it, leaving 1 warrior with 1 wound left. So then on my turn, I move forward and I kill the 3 boar boys, which is kind of the only thing I can see. And then I'm able to get my harpies around to shoot at his Deathcoptas, and I kill 2 of them. I put all the buffs on my Haruspecs and charge him onto the center objective where he kills the 10 boys there. Rich, with the player place terrain, Rich did put a ruin directly on that center objective. So I couldn't shoot the unit that was on the objective, but in order for them to be on the objective, they had to be within 1 inch of the wall so I could charge them. And so that's exactly what the Haruspex did. And with all the buffs, as I was saying, reroll all hit rolls, +1 to hit, exploding sixes, he 7d3 attacks. He quickly ate all 10 boys on the center objective, giving me direct assault and grind them down. I also had my Harpy charged one of the knobs on Smash a Squig and killed it with the mortal wounds on the charge, giving me 3 assassinate points. Rich then for turn 2 gets 10 primary for holding his 2 objectives and opts not to do Rod, as all of his units really want to get stuck in on all the objectives. So he manages to kill both my Harpies with his characters, but then basically the rest of his army shoots and charges into my Haruspex on that center objective. And somehow the Haruspex with Catalyst emerges completely unscathed. I just, as much as Jeremy rolled like a god against me round 3, I rolled insane against Rich. All of his shooting only doing a single wound to the Haruspex, so he had 12 left. And then after charging in with boys, the last remaining Defcopta, and his War Boss, the War Boss failed his 8-inch rerollable charge. So only the boys and Defcopta got to fight and put the Haruspex down to 6 wounds. And then the Haruspex promptly ate all of them except for a single knob. And on my turn, I made the Haruspex Obsec to get 10 primary because I held mine, and then I made the Haruspex Obsec to hold the center and just left the Haruspex there. This time without Catalyst. I put Catalyst on my Warlord Flyrant, who ended up charging his Beast Boss on Squigosaur. And here I made a crucial mistake. I forgot to do the Mortals on the charge. I just got really excited about all the charges and rolling so well and forgot to do the Mortals on the charge. I did put Paroxysm on his War Boss, so he's fighting last, but he also had an aura of fight last. So him and both my Flyrants that I charged into him, we all just fought last together, meaning I go first and then we alternate. And my Ignore Invuln Flyrant went first and put him down to 3 wounds, which means if I had done the Mortals on the charge, I probably would have killed him. But I forgot. And instead, he gets to go next, puts all his attacks into my -1 to wound Flyrant that hasn't swung yet. He deals 9 damage to him, putting him down to 3 wounds. So then my Scything Talon Flyrant gets to go, but he's at his bottom bracket, and because his Beast Boss has -1 to wound, I'm wounding him on 6s, and I do absolutely nothing. So I then fight twice with my Warlord, who just barely manages to kill the Beast Boss, which prevents Rich from being able to call his Wog this game, as his Warlord is now dead before he got to call it. And turning off +1 attack for 2 turns on Rich's massive MSU army is absolutely huge. And then basically the rest of my turn, I managed to kill another knob on Smash a Squig and got 7 assassinate points for the turn, in addition to grind him down in direct assault. And then Rich manages to get another 10 on his primary. He kills the wounded Flyrant in addition to my Haruspex and charges into my Warlord, but puts him down to 5 wounds left. Yeah, I just rolled really hot on saves again, so the Flyrant only goes down to 5 wounds, and he goes ham, killing Rich's entire Mega Knob squad on the swing back. So the dice were just on my side, and still had my Flyrant left. Killed all of Rich's Mega Knobs. And then on my turn, I managed to get... Rich did take away most of my objectives, so I did only get my home objective for 5 primary, and my Flyrant stayed stuck in combat with a bunch of boys and his last knob on Smash Squig. My shooting, I do get to finally just throw it at boy squads and start picking them up, and Swarmlord goes after the center objective, charging and killing his War Boss on the charge, and then killing his Pain Boss in combat. And my Warlord Flyrant goes down to 2 wounds from all the boys punching him before putting all his attacks into the knob on Smash a Squig that I put Paroxysm on and picks him up, giving me max Assassinate and grind him down and direct assault again. Unfortunately, Rich still manages to score 15 primary with all of his boys everywhere. And on his turn, he gets another Retrieve Octarius and Stranglehold, but he's now definitely running out of stuff. He's unable to get direct assault as nothing could take a hit from Swarmlord, who was sitting on the center of that center objective. So I'd be able to heroically intervene anything that he put on there. My turn 4, I get 10 primary and holding my home objective in the center, and basically focus on removing the last of his boys, but there's still too many. I double move one of my warrior squads to get onto his far objective, stealing it from the last boy there, and ensuring that Rich only manages to get 5 primary on his turn 5. I get grind and 5 points on direct assault for my turn 4. And then Rich on his turn 5 does his final rod and manages to string out 5 Storm Boys on both the center objective and my home objective to get him direct assault and stranglehold one last time. And on my turn, if I scored at the beginning of the turn, I would have only gotten 5 primary. But since I had bottom of the turn, Swarmlord just easily kills those 5 Storm Boys with just charging mortals off the charge and gets 15 primary, as well as grind him down and direct assault for the turn. And this meant that the final score was Rich and I both having 40 primary. And so it comes all down to secondaries. And Rich scored 15 points on Stranglehold. He got all 12 points on Retrieve Octarius. And he got 12 of the 15 on direct assault. I managed to score all 15 for Assassinate, all 15 for direct assault, and all 15 for grind him down, giving me the win 95-89. So with that, I did manage to take second place. My teammate Ben took first place, so great showing all around. He took first with the Grey Knights. I took second with the Crusher Stampede, and definitely made for a really fun card trip home. And was a fantastic event. Every game was awesome. Every opponent was awesome. And the list I love. I know it's not the conventional Crusher Stampede as I'm running Harpies and Haruspecs, but I don't think I'm going to change the list at all for LVO. Every single model ended up having a moment in the sun. The Harpies were great, just getting those turn 1 charges for mortal wounds and giving me engage points, and just being so annoying that my opponent had to kill them first, which meant all my important stuff lasted a lot longer. And then, the Haruspecs was absolute MVP in that final game against Rich. Being able to just thin out all those hordes is something that the Crusher Stampede really needs to be able to do. So I think he's staying in as well. And the list isn't going to change at all. Hope you liked the video. I know it's a long one, but had a lot to talk about. And I think my next video will probably be after LVO. Let you guys know how I do. And then we'll probably start making Genestealer Cult videos, because their new book seems pretty fun. I've looked at it. I tried one practice game with them, and it did not go well. But I played against Ben's Grey Knight list that he just won this event with. So, take that with a grain of salt. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I will catch you all in the next video. Thanks.